Scrape that can out, mija. Go on, do it now before I say anything else. It does not pour and it does not fall. It slides out in one piece and keeps the shape of the tin. The ridge is still pressed into the side of it, and you have to break it with the edge of the spoon. And underneath the salt there is that flat, cold, mineral taste of the container it lived in. You have decided somewhere along the way that this is simply what refried beans are. They are not, mija, that is a paste. It is the color of food and the shape of food, and it is not food, and you have eaten it for years because somebody told you the alternative was difficult. And maybe you did try once. You had a pot of beans and you thought, how hard can this be? You mashed them and you stood there stirring, and what you got was either a gray soup that ran across the plate or a lump of cement that tasted of almost nothing. And you scraped it into the bin and you bought the tin again the next week, and you did not tell anybody it had happened. Sit down, I want to tell you two things, and the first one is going to take a weight off you that you have been carrying for years. Your refried beans did not fail because you cannot cook. They failed because the pan was not hot enough and there was not enough fat in it. That is the whole of it. When the pan is cool and the fat is thin, the beans do not fry, they steam, and a steamed bean goes gray and pasty no matter how long you work at it. You did the labor and got nothing back, and then you blamed your hands. It was never your hands, mija. It was the fire and it was the fat. And the second thing, you have been throwing away the best part of the pot, and I do not mean the broth, though you have probably poured that away too. I mean the fat. When a pot of beans goes cold, a soft pale layer rises and sets on top, and it is carrying everything the pot cooked all day. Nobody in a working kitchen throws that away. You lift it off in one piece and you start tomorrow's pan with it. Every pan carries the one before it. You have been scraping that into the bin, and then wondering why yours taste like they were born this morning. You know me, I am Lupita. For 30 years I cooked in a fonda, 40 covers a day, 6 days a week, and the food had to be right at noon, and it had to still be right at 3 o'clock when the last person came in off the street. That is a different job from cooking one's supper. Everything I'm going to tell you is built for a pot that has to last. Last time we made a pot of beans, and so many of you wrote to say the broth tasted like something you would drink. Today we do what happens to them next. The whole recipe, every measurement, is written out in the description, so you can cook along with me. Now, before the pan, I have to take two things off you, because there is more folklore around this one dish than almost anything else in the kitchen, and both of the big ones are wrong. The first, you have been told that refried means fried twice. It does not, mija, it never did. The word is refritos, and that ray on the front is not a two, it is an emphasis, the way you would say well fried, or fried properly, or fried until it is really done. Somebody translated it in a hurry a long time ago, and the mistake stuck to it. And it matters because a woman who thinks she is meant to fry them twice cooks them once badly, lets them go cold, and fries them again to fix it, and by then the starch has set twice and there is nothing to be done. You fry them once, you fry them properly. That is what the word was always asking you to do. The second one is heavier, and it is costing you every single time. You have been told to go easy on the fat. Half a spoon, a little spray, a non-stick pan, and hope. Mija, listen to me. The fat is not a garnish on this dish, and it is not the naughty part. It is the cooking method. You are not frying the beans, you are heating the fat and letting the beans fall into it. And if there is not enough fat in the pan to carry them, they sit on hot metal and they dry and they stick and they go gray. 3 tablespoons for 2 cups of beans. That is not a lot. That is the amount that makes the difference between the paste in the tin and the thing you have been paying a restaurant for. Here is what is actually happening in that pan, so you know why. A cooked bean is a little bag of starch full of water. When you put it into hot fat and press it, 2 things happen at once. The water drives off as steam, and the fat gets in among the starch and coats it, and it is that coating that makes the difference between silky and pasty. Fat and heat together do it. Take away the heat and the water stays in and you get soup. Take away the fat and the starch has nothing to coat it and you get cement. That is the entire mechanism, and every rule I am about to give you is just a way of protecting it. So, the method in order, and write it down or take it out of the description where it is printed word for word. Step 1, have your beans ready and warm, about 2 cups of them, cooked soft enough that one crushes against the roof of your mouth with no fight in it. And keep the broth. Keep all of it in a jug next to the stove where you can reach it without turning round. Step 2, a wide pan, not a deep one. Wide because you want surface, and surface is where frying happens. 3 tablespoons of manteca or oil into it, over a medium to high flame, and you wait. You are waiting for the fat to shimmer and move like water when you tilt the pan. If you put a bean in and it sits there quietly, the pan is not ready and you have already lost. It should hiss at you. Step 3, half an onion, chopped fine, into that fat and cook it soft and just golden at the edges. 2 or 3 minutes. This is not for texture, it will disappear entirely. It is for the sweetness underneath everything else. Step 4, now the beans, and lift them with a slotted spoon. Beans first, broth afterwards always. If you tip the whole lot in, you have just filled your hot pan with cold liquid and dropped the temperature through the floor and you are back to steaming. Beans in and then mija, do not touch them. Let them sit for a full minute and take some color on the underside. That minute is flavor you cannot add later. Step 5, now mash. A potato masher, the back of a heavy spoon, a wooden bean masher if your mother left you one. Work it across the pan, not in circles. Step 6, and this is the one that separates a cook from somebody following instructions. You control the whole texture with the broth, a ladle at a time, never water. Water thins it and takes the taste with it. The broth thins it and adds taste back. One ladle, work it in, let it bubble and tighten for 30 seconds, taste, then decide whether it needs another. Never 2 ladles at once. You can always add, you cannot take out. And now let me show you what you actually have in that pan, because it is not 1 dish, it is 3, and the only thing that changes is when you stop. Stop early while it still moves and settles flat when you shake the pan. That is the loose one, the spoonful that goes beside rice on a plate at dinner. Keep going until you can drag the spoon through and the line holds for a second before it closes. That is the spreading one. That is what goes inside a torta, on a burrito, under an egg in the morning. And keep going a little further, patiently, until it pulls away from the sides in one piece and you could almost turn it out like an omelet. That is the thick one. That is what sits on top of a tostada and does not run off the edge onto your lap. Same pan, same beans, same fat, 3 different foods, mija, and all you changed was how long you stood there. And while you are standing there, let me settle the argument you are having in your head about the fat, because I will not pretend with you. Manteca gives you something oil cannot. It carries flavor in a way that oil simply does not. It sets firm when it cools so the pan holds together, and it is what almost every kitchen I ever stood in reached for without thinking. That is the truth, and the other half of the truth is that it is pork fat and some of you do not eat it, and some of you have a doctor who has opinions. So use oil, use a good one, and use the same 3 tablespoons, and do not apologize to anybody. What you will lose is a little richness at the finish. What you will not lose is the method, and the method is the part that was making your beans gray. Do not let anybody tell you it has to be one or the other before you are allowed to start. Now the part nobody teaches you in a home kitchen, mija, because at home the pan goes straight to the table. In a fonda it does not. It has to sit and still be worth eating 3 hours later, and that is a skill of its own. A pan of refritos that stands will grow a skin on the top. Everybody panics at that skin and stirs it back in, and stirring it in is exactly what ruins the pan, because a dried skin does not dissolve, it breaks up into little tight pieces through the whole thing. Leave it. Loosen underneath it with hot broth, warm, never boiling, and it will come back together, and put a spoonful of fat across the top before it sits. That film is not decoration, it is a lid. It stops the drying before it starts. Reheating on Thursday, the same law. Do not put cold beans into a dry pan and turn the flame up. They will go grainy and the grain never comes out. Fat into the pan first always, let it get hot, and then the beans, and then loosen with broth. 2 minutes and they are as good as Monday. That is not a trick, that is just knowing which order things go in. And if you're cooking for a crowd rather than a plate, one thing changes and it is not the fat ratio. The ratio holds. What changes is that you work in batches, because a pan crowded to the top steams in the middle no matter how much heat is under it. 2 smaller pans beat 1 big one every time. In a busy kitchen, we never filled a pan past halfway, and that is the whole secret of why it comes out the same at noon and at 3. And here is the thing that took me years to understand, mija, so I will just hand it to you. When people come back from somewhere and say the beans there were better, they are almost never talking about a recipe. They are talking about repetition. That pan has been running for a long time. The fat in it came off the top of yesterday's pot, and yesterday's came off the day before, and each one carried a little of the onion and the salt and the long, slow cooking forward into the next. Nothing was ever started from nothing. You cannot buy that and you cannot rush it, but you can begin it tonight with 1 small jar in the door of your fridge. In a month, your beans will taste like they came from somewhere, because they will have. And do not go looking for a shortcut to that. There's a whole aisle of things sold to put the taste back in, powders and cubes and little jars, and every one of them exists because somebody threw away the fat and the broth and then went shopping for what they had just binned. You already own it, mija. It is sitting on top of the cold pot right now. Now the honest words, because things go wrong and you should know whose fault it is. If they came out gray and pasty, your pan was not hot enough, not your mashing. Turn it up next time and wait for the shimmer. If they will not tighten and they run all over the plate, you added the broth too fast. A ladle, then wait. It thickens after the bubble, not during it. If they went grainy after a night in the fridge, you reheated them dry. fat first always. If they taste of nothing, it is salt, and it is usually salt that was missing back in the pot rather than in the pan. Season the beans when you boil them and this stops happening. If it sticks and catches at the end, that is not too little heat, that is too much heat once it got thick. A thick pan needs a lower flame, not a higher one. Everybody gets that backwards. And if there is a skin on top, that is not a fault at all, mija. That is what it is supposed to do, leave it be. Now let me say the quiet part about the tin. A pound of dried beans costs somewhere near $1.50 and gives you 6 or 7 cups cooked. The tin gives you under 2 cups and it costs about the same, so you're paying 3 or 4 times the money for something worse. And that is before you read what is in it, which is beans, water, salt, and a fat you would not choose and cannot see. And it is not a plot, mija. It is quieter than a plot. It is that a pan of refritos takes 20 minutes and a spoon of fat and almost no money, and there is no way on this earth to sell somebody 20 minutes. There is no product in it. Nobody's business grows because a woman stood at her own stove with a masher. So the pan quietly left the kitchen and the tin arrived, and 1 generation later people believe this is difficult. It was never difficult. It was just never profitable. So make it survive the week the way a working kitchen does. Cook more than you need always. What you do not eat goes into the freezer flat in a bag, pressed thin so it thaws in minutes and not hours, and with a little of the broth in there with it. And the fat cap off the cold pot goes into a small jar in the door of the fridge, and that jar is where next week starts. On the worst Thursday of your life, when you have nothing and no strength left, you are 8 minutes from something real. So here is what I would ask of you. Make a pan this week properly with the 3 tablespoons and the hot fat and the slotted spoon, and then come back and tell me in the comments whether the line held when you dragged the spoon through it. That is the test. That is the whole thing. And be honest with me about how many years you have been buying it in the tin, because I promise you are not the only one, and this comment section is where we all put that down. And tell me your county and whether your family used manteca or oil, because everybody is certain their own house did it the right way, and I like to read the arguments. Next time in this kitchen, we make the flour tortillas that go under all of this. The soft ones, the ones that puff up and go quiet again, the ones that make you understand what the bag in the shop has been doing to you. Bring your rolling pin. So today you take the beans you already know how to cook. You get the pan wide and the fat hot, and you wait for the shimmer like it matters, because it does. You lift the beans in and you leave them alone for a minute. You mash and then you decide, with a ladle in your hand and nobody standing over you, which of the 3 beans you want on the table tonight. And you keep the fat, mija. You keep the fat because that is tomorrow. The women who fed whole families out of 1 pan knew something that got lost when the tins arrived. It was never about having more. It was about wasting nothing and paying attention. And that, mija, is the cheapest thing in this kitchen and the only one that has never once let me down.